This is New Day with Allison Camarada and John Berman.
We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. This is New Day. It is Thursday, January 3rd, 6 o'clock here in New York. It's not just New Day. It's a new day. It's a new year. It's a new Congress. It's a new era of divided government. I got a lot of news.
That's a lot of new.
There's a lot of news this morning. In just a few hours, the 116th Congress will gavel in, and Democrats will take control of the House of Representatives, effectively ending one-party rule. Nancy Pelosi expected to make history again, reclaiming her role as House Speaker, the first person to do so in more than 50 years. The new Congress also makes history with a record number of women serving in office, and it will be the most racially and ethnically diverse in American history.
This is just the fourth time in 60 years that control of the House has shifted, so that in and of itself is a big deal. The new Congress begins with new challenges, namely it's day 13 of the government shutdown with no end in sight. We're learning new details about the meeting in the White House Situation Room between the president and congressional leaders. It did not go well. Sources tell CNN the president said he would look foolish if he accepted the Democrats' proposal to end the shutdown. And in a new interview, incoming Speaker Nancy Pelosi says Democrats will give nothing, that's her word, nothing, for the president's border wall, which of course is the one he promised that Mexico would pay for in the first place. Meanwhile, some 800,000 federal workers, they're not getting paid. We begin our morning where history will be made in just a few hours. CNN's Laura Fox live on Capitol Hill. Laura, this Congress looks different than any before it.
That's right. It is a new era on Capitol Hill this morning as Democrats prepare to take control of the House of Representatives for the first time in nearly a decade. And there's going to be a lot of pomp and circumstance on the House floor today. First, that vote for Speaker. We expect that Nancy Pelosi will retake the gavel. And as you mentioned, a historic time as she regains it, first time in nearly 50 years. Now, the other thing to remember today is that after that, she will swear in the 116th Congress, the most racially diverse and with a historic number of women. Then Democrats are going to try to demonstrate that they can govern. They will vote to end the government shutdown. They will vote for a bill that includes 6 Senate-passed appropriations bills, as well as a continuing resolution that would keep the Department of Homeland Security funded through February. Now, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell over in the Senate, where Republicans still have control, will not take that bill up because it does not have the border security money that the president wants. And the president's not going to sign it. He says we're not going to waste our time in the Senate on bills that the president won't sign. That's just what we can see today. Behind the scenes, Democrats have been preparing for months to do vigorous oversight into the Trump administration. And that's from every committee, from the House Ways and Means Committee to the House Judiciary Committee to House Oversight. Everyone is going to have a role to play. It is a huge day up here on Capitol Hill, and it's a big day for President Trump as he prepares to hear from Democrats he hasn't had to listen to for quite some time.
Okay, Lauren, great to have you there for us. Thank you very much. Joining us now to talk about all of this, we have A.B. Stoddard, associate editor and columnist at Real Clear Politics, Jackie Kucinich, Washington bureau chief of the Daily Beast, and Sung-Min Kim, White House reporter for the Washington Post. Great to have all of you here. So it is an historic day. Just to put up in a graphic exactly of the diversity changes for this new Congress, 40 new women, 20 new veterans, 10 new Hispanic or Latino members, 9 new Black members, 3 new LGBTQ members. AB, 102 women will now serve in the House. If it really reflected the United States, it would be twice that many. Not to be a wet blanket this morning, okay? But baby steps, and it's the most women ever. So what changes?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's pretty remarkable that Nancy Pelosi is the first ever Speaker of the House woman, and she's coming back to that role after 8 years with 89 Democratic women in her caucus. And what it will lead to with a Republican Senate and a Republican president in terms of legislation, we don't know, but it will certainly elevate the voice of women in these debates. You will see more of them on the news, taking part in a national conversation. And as you mentioned, all the diversity, even within the Democratic caucus, 2 Muslim women, 2 Native American women. It is very unfortunate for the Republican conference in the House that they're down to only 13 women. They lost some members who were defeated and who also departed as well to run for other office or to retire. And it's very interesting if you look at the numbers of sort of the proportion of white men in the Republican conference shot up in this election as it went rapidly down in the Democratic caucus. And that's going to be a conversation as we head into 2020, even if it means that even if it doesn't mean, that there's different kinds of bills coming out of the Congress and signed into law.
You know, it is interesting. 102 is not 218, which is what it would be if it really reflected. But in terms of the changes, when Nancy Pelosi was elected to Congress for the first time, and she first took her seat in 1987, there were 23. There were 23 women in the House of Representatives in 1987. Now there are 102. So you can see the changes there. You know, to AB's point, though, in 1987, there were 11 Republican women. In 2019, there are 13 Republican women. Astounding growth of two. Two Republican women for the House of Representatives. Really interesting to see that, Jackie. But again, you know, it is history. It is history here when Congress, when the House, which is the people's House, gets more diverse before our very eyes.
Not only the House, but let's not forget that in the Senate, Marsha Blackburn is the first woman elected from Tennessee to the Senate, and Arizona has 2 female senators coming in, and that is also a first. I mean, there wasn't one to begin with. So there are these bright spots for diversity in both chambers. But you're absolutely right. It is. What you said in terms of Republicans. But I think what people are really going to be watching, this is a really exciting day. I love the first day of a new Congress. There is so much promise and hope, and everyone's there with their families and kids. And it's really, as Lauren detailed, it's an exciting day. But there is this pall coming over this Congress at the get-go because the government shut down. And with it, this enormous responsibility of opening the government. And how are they going to do that? That is still an open question. I can't remember a Congress where there was this looming fight right at the beginning. And it certainly will feel that today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're so right. That juxtaposition of the hope and then the spoiling for the fight, the Dukes are already up. Sungmin, I mean, so, you know, look, I think it's interesting. The numbers are interesting. Obviously, it's interesting to look at the diversity via the numbers. But what does this mean? Women, the hype, on women is that we're better negotiators and compromisers.
Is that it?
That is it. I mean, right? That's what the research suggests.
You convinced me.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Right. Very well. This is a man who has a good marriage, you can tell. But in any event, so what does that mean? Does that mean the Democrats will dig in on the things that they have been stewing about for 2 years, or that they'll reach across the aisle and compromise?
Well, your point about women being better negotiators was interesting because it just reminded me of when we were in a similar government shutdown more than 5 years ago over the funding of Obamacare. It was actually a group of Senate women from the both Republican Party and the Democratic Party who got frustrated and who started talking and helped kind of at least break the logjam. So at least the two parties were starting to talk again about reopening the government. But that sense of hope, that sense of optimism clearly is not here as we face this government shutdown, and both sides, both the president and both Democratic leaders, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, show no signs of budging from their respective positions. But Democrats really do come in to their new House majority with this emboldened sense of power. They've been wanting to exercise oversight of the administration and exercise their investigative powers. And so you're going to see that aggressive posture going forward. And I think just the diversity of the freshman class, I think, is also interesting, even just with the ideological perspective within the Democratic caucus, because we talk a lot about the rising, emboldened left, the progressive wing of the party. I mean, we're talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's going to be the youngest member of Congress, and the influence that she's already had on our party. But remember, the House Democrats won their majority by winning in a lot of conservative and swing territory. So you're going to have a lot of moderate House Democrats who don't always agree with the strategy and perhaps also the policy positions of that progressive wing. And those diverse views and how those clash and how those mesh will be very fascinating storylines to watch in the coming 2 years. You
know, it's interesting. Sungmin used the O word there, which is oversight. Yes, it's the first day of the new Congress. It still has that new Congress smell. But it's the first day the rest of the life, the political life of President Donald Trump, who now has, for the first time, Democratic oversight, a serious check on his administration, a serious check on his presidency, AB, and that has huge ramifications.
Yeah, I think that the Democrats so far have been smart about the fact that they're going to choose their battles wisely and that they're going to put impeachment immediately off of the table of discussion until there is a Mueller report. And they're going to do the oversight of this administration. If you look just at the sort of incredible list of ethical misdeeds and misconduct and overstepping and rule bending of the cabinet officials alone before you look at President Trump or his family and possible emoluments violations or anything like that. It's been breathtaking. And the Republicans in Congress for 2 years abdicated their constitutional duty to hold the other branch of government in check and oversee the executive. It's been pretty amazing. And so that's going to be a huge surprise for the administration, for the entire executive branch. They're going to be lawyered up and they're going to be tongue-tied. It's going to be, though, also a rhetorical battle. President Trump has already labeled this presidential harassment, and it's going to be up to the Democrats to convince the public and those swing voters who went for Trump by 12 points in 2016 and for the Democrats by 12 points in 2018, a 24-point swing, to make sure that they are not overstepping and overdoing and that they are really doing the people's business in terms of uncovering a wrongdoing or policy mistakes. There's a lot in that realm that they're going to be looking at that really enlighten us and not look like presidential harassment. So that's going to be a political balancing act, but it certainly is required. There's so much that needs to be investigated that was simply blockaded by the House Republicans for 2 years.
Jackie, one of their first orders of business is that they hope to pass a measure or present, I guess, a measure that all presidents would have to cough up 10 years of tax returns. Too late for Donald Trump, since he's already in office, though they will get to that as well. But their first order is that they don't want to be in this predicament again, it sounds like.
You know, I think there's going to be a lot of legislation that the House passes that is going to end up being largely symbolic because it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate. And they're going to have to balance that. Sundman mentioned a lot of the members that are coming from more Republican-leaning districts. They're going to have to balance these symbolic votes with actual legislative pushes. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying in terms of policy, there's going to be a push to not focus on the president, to focus on what they promised in terms of economic policy, taxes, things like that. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure from that blue dog conservative Democratic wing that Pelosi's going to have to keep in check with the very active progressive side of the caucus. And to AB's point, I think we're going to see a lot of old faces, too, from seasons 1 and 2 of the Trump administration being marched in front of those committees because they want to talk to not only the current cabinet secretaries, but also the ones that have already left.
In reality show terms, I believe this is the reunion episode that Jackie's talking about. The reunion episode happening before congressional committees doing oversight hearings. That has an added twist. The person running all of this, as Jackie was saying, is Nancy Pelosi. She will be, for the second time, the Speaker of the House. What kind of speaker will she be? Well, we had Alexandra Pelosi, her daughter, on yesterday.
That got a lot of attention.
It did, under really insightful questioning. This is what Alexandra said about her mother.
She'll cut your head off and you won't even know you're bleeding. That's all you need to know about her. No one ever won betting against Nancy Pelosi.
Now, what's funny about your insightful questioning is that she didn't actually want to answer any questions about her mother. But when you pressed her, she gave us that gem of what to look forward to.
As I said, the probing question there. Sungmin, Nancy Pelosi, she has her work cut out for her. Yes, she has to juggle both wings of the party there. But by all accounts, Republican and Democrat, that you will read in the papers this morning, she's an adept legislator. She's an adept caucus leader.
Exactly. I mean, in the years that I've covered Capitol Hill, I mean, she has been widely regarded as the congressional leader who could best count votes. And she has talked a lot about her political upbringing with her father, the former mayor of Baltimore, and she just learned how to count and know where the votes are. And that's why remember when she didn't quite have the votes for Speaker, seems like several months ago, but it was only a few weeks ago, that we looked at the numbers. They weren't there, but we knew that Nancy Pelosi Pelosi would somehow get there because she knows what her members want and needs for their own political fortunes. And we kind of had the confidence that she'd be able to lock up the votes. But she is an adept legislator. Look, she's been in Congress for decades. She's been at the top of the Democratic ranks, much to the chagrin of some in her caucus, for a very long time. And I think the relationship between the president and the incoming speaker will be a fascinating one to watch. Clearly, the president has not had congressional adversaries, at least when it comes to the leadership, because the Congress has been controlled by Republicans for the last 2 years. But Pelosi, while backed up by this emboldened left wing of the caucus, is going to it'll be a match to watch. Definitely, they will be adversaries, but also Pelosi does have a deal maker in here, and we'll have to see the next 2 years where the two sides can come together if they can.
It'll be a Congress to watch, but it's going to be a day to watch also. I want to emphasize that. Stay with CNN all day long. You get to see the new House gavel in, which is always an historic moment. Jackie was talking about how cool that is to see every 2 years. We, of course, will cover it all for you live, and it's just the beginning of this battle between Democrats and the president. President Trump and the Democrats facing off over this budget impasse. So far, not budging one bit. We'll give you all the latest developments in this battle over the government. All right, we have new developments in this government shutdown battle that has now entered its 13th day. That bipartisan group of lawmakers met with the president yesterday, and a source tells CNN that the president told them that he would look foolish if he accepted the Democrats' offer to reopen the government. The expected incoming House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, says the Democrats will not give a dollar for the president's border wall. Listen.
Are you willing to come up and give him some of this money for the wall? Because apparently that's the sticking point.
No, nothing for the wall. We're talking about border security.
Nothing for the wall, but that means it's
well,
a
we can go
non-starter.
through this all, back and forth. No. How many more times can we say no? Nothing for the wall.
Back with us, AB starter Jackie Kucinich, Sungmin Kim. Sungmin, nothing for the wall. Does that mean
Nothing?
Nothing for border fences, nothing for, border scansions, border anything? Slats? Or are we just talking at this point, nothing for the concrete border wall?
They're focused on the concrete wall because Democrats have said over and over that they want border security, but they don't want it in this, quote, medieval wall that the president has been calling for. So for Democrats, border security means shoring up the fencing that's already there on the southern border, employing new technology to do a more 21st century security method on the border. And that's primarily what the $1.3 billion that Pelosi and Schumer have pitched covers. But for Trump, a wall has been a wall. Even though, as some of his aides have backed up that definition of a wall lately, and a lot of his base, a lot of the conservatives in Congress also think that a wall is the way to go. I mean, I was talking with Congressman Steve King over the break about the shifting explanations that the administration has had for the wall and for border security, and he said, look, walls are concrete. You can't cut through a wall. Walls don't have prosecutorial discretion. We need that wall there. So you do see how hard it is for the two sides to come to a compromise. And I do think Democrats will be willing to come up a little bit but on border security and not the wall.
Look, part of the problem, AB, is that the president hasn't been able to define exactly what he wants. Show us a map. Show us a map where there's a lapse in the border where people are pouring through, if that exists. Is it 50 miles? Is it 1,000 miles? Is it 700 miles? It's all over the map, no pun intended. And he has changed from a 32-foot wall to a fence to slats. So I don't even know what they think they're negotiating with. I mean, is this a semantics argument? If he stopped calling it a wall and started calling it fencing, would Nancy Pelosi give him some more money?
I don't know. I mean, I can't predict what the Democrats will do because we don't know what the Republicans don't know what the president will sign and what he'll give. I do think the Democrats should come to the table on something and get something out of this. I think that to give him something that he will surely brand as a win, no matter what it is, he'll call it a wall and he'll call it a win because, as we know, he has said it's not only steel slats. He's gone from 2,000 miles to 550. He's, gone all over the map on the numbers. He's gone back to it being a concrete wall. He has assured us yesterday Mexico has already paid for it and it already exists. But he gives himself the constant wiggle room. I think the Democrats are waiting, to hear what he's going to come up with. And I do think that they should get something out of this, whether it's legalization for the Dreamers or work permits or something. I think that in the end, when he gets his $2.3 billion or whatever he calls a wall and they call border security, I think they should do some kind of compromise and get something out of this and show the American people they were willing to work with him instead of, keep the government open for months. But surely they know at this point the public blames President Trump for the shutdown. You can tell from this televised meeting yesterday with his acting cabinet that he does not at all see any political pain from a shutdown. He thinks that his 38% of the country is with him and that he's fine on that it's a fight worth having to shore up his base. And he does not yet understand that Senate Republicans soon will not be able to continue to say no to all the bills that the House Democrats keep sending over their way. So right. I think he'll feel it in a few days, but he doesn't feel it now.
I have to say, also at play yesterday, we saw one of the reasons there's no deal yet, because Democrats don't know what they're negotiating with, because the administration has no consistent thread. The president undercut Vice President Mike Pence multiple times yesterday, rejecting the $2.5 billion that Pence had been up on the Hill floating. So what is Pence supposed to think? And that's after Pence had gone and said that the president would sign the $1.3 billion continuing
And after the
resolution.
president himself had said, I probably will. I think I might.
So they don't know what they're negotiating with. The president's also making things up. AB brought up the fact the president claims that Mexico's already paying for the wall. They're not. Mexico is not paying for the wall.
The wall's already being built.
It's not, right? So those things are not true. Those are lies. He knows that they're not true. So it's hard to negotiate with a moving target and sometimes disappearing target, Jackie.
Well, it also, AB said this a couple times, but I think it's worth being a little Captain Obvious about this, in that this is about politics. This is bigger than the wall in a lot of ways to this president. Listen to Lindsey Graham, who a couple days ago said that the president might be open to a deal, now is saying he should just forget about his presidency if he doesn't hold firm on this. If that's who's talking to the president, if that's what the president is hearing from his right flank, how can he compromise if he thinks that his presidency is riding on making sure this gets done? So it really puts Republicans and Democrats in a tough spot, because if he's really put himself in a corner here, and it's unclear how he can get out without looking foolish. Remember, even way back when he was talking to the president of Mexico, in one of those first phone calls, he said, "You got to give me something." I'm paraphrasing here. It's always been just being able so he can say he has a win. That's what matters, and that's what's going to complicate this till the very end when it ends.
Also, Sungmin, there's so many different people who feel that walls work. The acting director of ICE was on Fox last night saying that in his 33 years of experience, walls do slow people down. Walls do work. Yes, can people tunnel under them at some point? Sure, but it takes a while to dig that tunnel. And so he was making the case, and of course the president's listening to that. But getting to our next point, which is he's the acting director of ICE. There's a lot of acting going on here. This is Trump's acting cabinet. Look at what great actors these are. I mean, this is...
And the Oscar goes to...
acting. This is a problem. I mean, these are the people who were not his first choice. The president said that he only finds the best people. Well, the best people have left. And these are people who have not either been confirmed or were just waiting in the wings. And I've just never seen anything like this amount of acting.
Exactly. I mean, I think the cabinet has 15 or so people, and there's 7 people on the screen. So about half of the most important positions in government are people who are not Senate confirmed, who are not supposed to be there in a temporary capacity, and who are there because their predecessors have left the administration, oftentimes in very dramatic ways. I'm thinking of Defense Secretary James Mattis, whose last day was earlier this week, resigning over the really tense confrontations over the president's decision to withdraw troops from Syria. And all those vacancies do create a problem for Senate Republicans as well, because they are having to, instead of pushing a proactive agenda alongside the president and battling the Democrats and helping the president battling the House Democrats, they have to spend a lot of their energy confirming these cabinet nominees. The first on the batch for the new year seems to be the Attorney General nominee, William Barr. The Judiciary Committee will hold hearings for him on January 15th and 16th. Those confirmation hearings will be very important to watch, not only because of the importance of the position of Attorney General in the U.S. government, but also Democrats and perhaps some Republicans will also have a lot of questions about Mr. Barr's views on the Mueller probe. He has written a memo kind of casting a skepticism on that special counsel's investigation, and that issue has been so central to the Justice Department and the president's conflicts with the Justice Department over the last 2 years. So we can expect those confirmation hearings to be very heated.
You know, one of the many interesting things Sung Min said right there is that James Mattis, General Mattis, resigned, which in fact is what he did. General Mattis resigned, despite the fact that yesterday the president said this.
Done for me. How has he done in Afghanistan? Not too good. Not too good. I'm not happy with what he's done in Afghanistan, and I shouldn't be happy. But he was very happy. He was very thankful when I got him $700 billion, and then the following year, $716 billion. So, I mean, I wish him well. I hope he does well. But as you know, President Obama fired him, and essentially so did I. I want results.
Essentially, he did not. Essentially, Defense Secretary James Mattis quit, AB, and the president's trying to rewrite history there.
Well, I was thinking when Sung Min was talking, I mean, one of the biggest concern to Senate Republicans right now is the departure of Mattis, the Syria policy, and who the next Secretary of Defense is. This is a very bad time for us to not have stability at the Pentagon. James Mattis, as you know, is beloved by the entire rank and file in the military, every single service branch. And this is an incredible loss. And for the president, who knows how beloved James Mattis is, to not be able to contain himself before his acting cabinet at the table and to trash him that way is simply astonishing. And there are Republicans we know across town today just dismayed that he would speak this way. And we haven't heard from any of them.
AB, Jackie Sung Min, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Again, stick around with CNN all day to see this historic day in Congress as the new House and the new Senate begins their work. Also ahead on New Day, we're going to speak with Senate Minority Whip, the number 2 Democrat in the House and the Senate, Dick Durbin. He was in the Situation Room meeting with President Trump.
That will be fascinating to hear what actually went on inside there. So history has also been made in space, not just Earth, space. The mysterious far side of the moon has been reached. We'll tell you who won the latest space race and what they saw over there. And
just stunning video of a college basketball player.
No, I don't like that.
Slamming his head into the backboard. I'm going to give you a teaser here. He's okay.
He doesn't look okay.
He's okay. We'll show it to you again multiple times.
Oh, boy.
Next. All right, we do have some breaking news. Prosecutors in Saudi Arabia are seeking the death penalty for at least 5 people linked to the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The announcement comes as 11 unnamed suspects in Khashoggi's death attend their first court hearing. Prosecutors have also sent a request to Turkey for evidence that they have collected after Khashoggi was killed last October inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul.
The U.S. ambassador to Russia met with an American detained in Moscow on allegations of espionage. No further details of Paul Whelan's arrest have been released by the Kremlin, but we are learning more about his background. CNN's Matthew Chance is live in Moscow with more. What have you learned, Matthew?
Christine, thanks very much. Quite a bit from in terms of the background of Paul Whelan from his social media sites. For many years, he's had a close relationship with Russia in the sense he's been travelling here for business and pleasure for the past 12 or 13 years, it seems. And over that time, he's accumulated some contacts on his social media page, 70 of them at least. Many of them seem to be members or former members of the Russian military, the Russian security services, and that may have been one of the things that highlighted his presence to the Russian security services. There has been this consular visit, finally, that took place, being led by John Huntsman, who's the US ambassador to Russia. Mr. Huntsman issued a statement afterwards saying that he visited Mr. Whelan at the Lefortovo detention facility, which is one of the main prisons, former KGB prison, in fact, on the outskirts of Moscow. The ambassador expressed support for Paul Whelan and offered the embassy's assistance. He also then subsequently called the Whelan family and spoke to them about Mr. Whelan's condition. But no details have been given to us about that, nor have any details actually been given to us at this stage by the Russians about the circumstances of this arrest. They just say that he was caught spying, basically implying he was caught red-handed in the act of espionage, but no further detail has been given about that. Now, one of the interesting things that's being commented on is the fact that the ambassador himself went to the prison and inspected and interviewed Mr. Whelan. That shows, I think, just how important this case is being taken by the United States. Back to you.
All right, Matthew Chance, thanks for staying on that for us. Really appreciate it. A huge development in space. China has successfully landed a rover on the far side of the moon. That's the side that never actually faces the Earth. And this has never happened before. This morning, we're getting our first close-up images. Matt Rivers live in Beijing with this huge moment in science, national security, every which way you want to look at it.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, John, especially for China's space program. We can show you the first image, the first close-up image ever taken of the far side of the moon that was transmitted via relay satellite that the Chinese launched from where that lunar rover landed, and it was met with huge acclaim here in China. This is a major accomplishment, and they really puts China's space program in the history books. This lunar rover is going to conduct a number of experiments, everything from actually experimenting to see if plants, like even potatoes, can be planted, believe it or not, in certain specialized containers that could help with developing lunar bases in the future. They're going to explore for resources in both the north and south lunar poles, and they're also going to listen to frequencies coming from deep space, which is easier to do from that side of the moon because there's no interference from signals coming from Earth. A lot on that to-do list, but really it's also a signal to the rest of the world that China is going to become a space power if they're not one already. They've got a series of other initiatives coming down the line, a probe set to go to Mars in 2020, an international space station they want to launch in 2022. They are here to stay. Far be it from me to say if there's a new space race in the making, but if there is one between China and the U.S., China seems to be game to run in that race. Allison.
Very cool stuff, Matt. Thank you. Has Pink Floyd weighed in yet?
We're trying to get comments.
Any comments from Mr. Floyd?
Mr. Floyd is on the other line for us.
Okay, fantastic. Now to this sad news. Grammy-winning musician Daryl Dragon has died. The world knew him as the Captain, one half of the popular 70s singing duo The Captain and Tennille. How great is that song?
Written by?
Oh, Harry Enton's uncle. That's how I know him.
A member of the New Day family,
yes,
Neil Sedaka.
Love Will Keep Us Together was their biggest hit. Not Muskrat Love? Daryl Dragon died Wednesday in Arizona. He was 76. His publicist says Tony Tennille was at the Captain's side when he passed.
It's interesting because they were divorced a couple years ago, but they remained friends after that.
You can't break up that duo.
No, you can't. Muskrat Love was the most important song. Maybe not their biggest hit.
I don't even know what that was about. Was that about muskrats?
In love, because that's important.
God, the 70s were weird.
Another fun fact, he wasn't actually a captain.
He wasn't?
No.
Because he had the hat.
He was not a captain. He played for the Beach Boys. He played backup for the Beach Boys. And I guess Mike Love, who was a singer there, called him the captain of the keyboards.
You know a lot about the Captain.
Captain Tennille, very important to me.
I can see that.
Very important to me.
Luckily, we'll have Harry Enton on to weigh in on all of this.
Absolutely. All right. I want you to show you some amazing video from a basketball game. North Central's Blaze Meredith. Look at that.
Oh, God.
Slammed his head into the backboard full speed while blocking a shot in a game on Wednesday. He did appear to be unharmed despite the blow. The good news, really, is he managed to get up and walk off the court. Somehow, he returned to the game.
Oh,
not quite sure how he was cleared from any kind of concussion protocol after he hit the backboard that hard. That's stunning video, though. One more time.
No.
Oh, he's okay. He's okay.
Is it over?
He's okay.
All right. As more Democrats prepare to enter the 2020 presidential race, which one is the most electable?
I never thought I was going to get in politics, never in a million years. But I got in this because I believe this is the fight that we must fight. And I can't tell others to go fight it. I have to be in there right alongside them.
Okay, that was Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren explaining why she is exploring a 2020 presidential run. She is the first major candidate to dip her toe in the water. So is she the most electable? There's something about Harry, so let's discuss with CNN senior politics writer and analyst Harry Enton. Harry, great to see you.
Shalom.
Gosh.
Happy New Year.
We're off to a good start. And to you. Okay, so new year, new candidates. Let's talk about electability. We're still many days out, honestly.
More than a year out.
Okay, but this is a snapshot
Right.
of where we are. And some of these people obviously haven't announced even an exploratory committee. However, you have the potential 2020 contenders. Show us what we're looking at.
Right. So essentially what we're looking at here is these are the candidates who are in the United States Senate or ran for the United States Senate in 2018, looking at their margin and comparing it to how House Democrats did in that exact same state. And what we saw in Massachusetts, for example, is Elizabeth Warren won her race by 24 points, but House Democrats in that state won their races cumulatively by 36 points.
And what does that tell you? She doesn't have as much momentum as you'd think?
I think it suggests that voters in those states who are pulling the levers for Democrats in the House races weren't as willing to pull the lever for her in the Senate race, which suggests perhaps some sort of likability factor, perhaps going against her versus, say, Amy Klobuchar or Sherrod Brown, where they did much better than the House Democrats did in their states.
They are not as liked as the average Democrat in their state.
That's a great way of putting
it. Which is interesting to see. If Elizabeth Warren is going to be some liberal icon, what's interesting is in Massachusetts, she's not even as well liked as the average Democrat would be.
Exactly. And one thing I should point out is, Sherrod Brown's a very well-known progressive, a voice to the left, and he actually outperformed. So I don't just think it's about ideology. You could claim it's about gender, but look, Amy Klobuchar is at the top of that list as well. It suggests something particular to Elizabeth Warren.
And Beto O'Rourke, just for those following Beto Mania, the daily update, he looks average.
Right. I think that's one of the more interesting things in this chart, right? People saying, oh, wow, Beto O'Rourke did very, very well in Texas, which is this longtime Republican state. But one thing that should be pointed out, it could just be that Texas is changing because Texas Democrats actually didn't do that poorly in the House races there.
Unless it was Beto who inflated their numbers.
It could be the case. I think that's one of those things, but we're definitely going to discuss as the days and months go by if Beto decides to get in the race.
Let's look at where past Democratic nominees have been at this point for some context.
Yeah, I think that this is, to me, a fascinating table because we're going to be talking about the polls now from now all the way up to the primary. And what we see here is actually most of the time the polls, at least in the recent history, have done a pretty good job of getting who the nominee was going to be, whether it be Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, John Kerry, Al Gore. All of them were right near the top of the field at this particular time. So, if Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or Beto O'Rourke become the nominee, it shouldn't be surprising given where they're polling. However, I should point out Michael Dukakis was only polling at 1% at this point in 1988.
Wowie.
And he obviously went on and won that nomination.
But by and large, it's good to be first or second in the polls.
I would rather be at the top of the polls than the bottom of the polls.
All right.
Deep.
Talk about New Year's resolutions. You've got some important numbers.
These are the most important numbers that I have here. We spoke about it a little bit last week. A lot of people have been making those resolutions. About 44% of the public, in fact, said that they were going to make their a New Year's resolution. But whether or not did they keep it, we can look back to last year, and we can see that of that 44%, 68% said they kept at least part of it, but 32% didn't keep their resolution at all, which if you were to multiply it out, only 30% of people actually make a resolution and keep it. I, of course, did not make a New Year's resolution. No. If I were to make one, though, maybe my diet, maybe, I could cut back on the Popeyes. That would be a good place, maybe exercising a little bit more, as I shared on the weekend program last week. I had some shin splints running for a bus. So, I think for a man my age, getting shin splints running for a bus, not a particularly good size. So maybe some more exercise for me.
How about less sleeping in the office?
Oh, come on. You like coming in and seeing me sleeping on that thing. Everyone from the New Day crew gets their pictures of me. I think Avalon has one where he's smiling at me going like this. I mean, look, I like to be a little bit of a clown, a serious clown, though.
I don't mind the sleeping in the office, but you actually change into sleepwear.
And then traipse around the office in the sleepwear.
Look, there's nothing wrong with wearing sweatpants in the office occasionally, just to keep things a little bit light.
People think we're kidding. We're not. We're not.
But it's the love that does keep us together.
Okay, a sad day in the Sedaka house.
It is, and that was a great song for him. And remember, my uncle had, a lot of hits in the late 50s and early 60s, kind of had this gap when the Beatles came in the mid-60s and late 60s. And Love Will Keep Us Together was one of those songs to help put him back on the map.
Absolutely.
Noted that he just went negative on the Beatles. Harry, great to have you here.
Yeah, Beatles are okay.
Apple's CEO is blaming President Trump's trade war with China on a slump in iPhone sales. This is a big